bits that we like, can't we?
Well, so like throughout the day, you're just thinking about, what can we talk about, and things just pop into your head.
Things just pop into your head.
Well, we can make a show about anything, though.
Any one topic?
Anything.
Or just everything?
Well, everything eventually. But,
well, not everything, but there's too much, isn't there?
Well, we won't live for long enough.
No.
But I think we can tackle it.
There's nothing we can't talk about.
No. And I think anything can be drawn out for... Not even drawn out, it would just be like a natural progression of like at least 30 minutes of anything. Because everything's kind of touches on everything else.
It does. It's all sort of interlinked, isn't it? Like some network.
Yeah.
It just ties into just a multitude of stuff.
Well, everything does.
Yeah. Like you can start talking about something. I don't know if you've ever done this. And then 20 minutes later, you think, how did we end up talking about this?
Yeah. So anyway, what were we talking about?
Because we were talking about, leather jackets or something. And now we're talking about moon conspiracy. Do you know what I mean?
That's hell of a link.
How did that happen? But somehow it did.
Yeah.
So it's not that difficult.
So it's strange, when people like first meet each other and it's like, I don't know what to say and all this stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of that social maybe awkwardness.
Yeah.
And that silence where people don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I think, well, you've got a limited amount of where can you start? Is there too much that it blows people's minds?
Yeah, that's a good question. It probably is too much. And so you think, well, you can't just start talking about anything to someone that you just meet for the first time, can you? I remember...
Like moon conspiracies?
So you kind of have to narrow it down somewhat. But then you think, well, I don't know anything about them, and they don't know anything about me, and so are they going to judge me based on that? And where do you start? But at least if you go to, say, I don't know, a conference or something, or you're at uni or whatever, you've all got like a topic that you're all there in the name of. So that narrows it down and it makes it a bit easier. But someone's just like, this is so and so, and you're sitting in a room with them. You have to start somewhere, don't you?
Yeah.
But it's kind of like trying to find some common ground and join on something.
I think like sometimes it's useful to just sort of highlight observations around you, because you're both in the same room and you're both kind of like looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
Or you might have seen the same thing on the way to the place that you're at.
Yeah.
Just to find common ground there, because it's not so much about what you're talking about. It's the language being used, right? And it's the eye contact and this and that.
Yeah.
That's sometimes more like substantial than the actual words. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I do. A lot of people just say something about the weather, and that's kind of like, okay, if you've got to start somewhere, I suppose that's a good place, but that's like kindergarten stuff, I remember though, I read this book once, years ago, and it was called No One Here Gets Out Alive, and it was about Jim Morrison from The Doors. And I just remember this bit in there where, he didn't write it. I think it was written by, could have been Danny Sugarman, I don't know. Somebody who was a young guy who was around at the time that was remembering things. But he was on a bus, and he just asked this old lady on the bus. He said, what do you think about elephants? And she just didn't know how to respond, And he was like, what do you think about elephants? And she did not know what to say to him, and it became this big thing, and he got thrown off the bus, and he's like, I just want to know what she thinks about elephants. I was like, well, yeah, that's all he's asking, but that's just, it's just going, it's beyond like a social norm, isn't it? Asking some old lady on the bus what she thinks about elephants. There's nothing wrong with that.
Was she offended, this lady?
I think she was just a bit embarrassed or humiliated. Maybe she thought, oh, he's just some cocky young troublemaker. He was kind of like, I think he used to say, just testing the bounds of reality.
Yeah, it's a social experiment.
What happens if I ask somebody what they think about elephants? And there used to be a guy called, he had a YouTube channel, Charlie Veitch, I think his name was. Veitch, I think. And he used to do things like that. He would just go into like a public place and stand there holding a sign that said, everything is okay.
Oh!
Do you remember him?
The Love Police.
The Love Police, that was it.
Yes, I remember.
And the amount of trouble and controversy that used to cause.
Everything's okay.
Well, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just standing here with a sign. Yeah, but what's it in aid of? Are you protesting? Well, what's your message? And he's like, I'm just standing here with a sign that says everything's okay, just to show what happens when I do that. And I think he even got arrested on more than one occasion, but because people just don't know how to respond, do they? Why is there a man over there with a sign that says everything's okay? Everything's clearly not okay.
It's weird. You can get stuck into, I don't know what normal is. Everyone's just living their lives, and we're not supposed to communicate kind of out of the ordinary. Even speaking to somebody in a queue, you're waiting for something and be like, oh, hey, how are you? Or,
yeah.
I suppose you don't want to, it's not socially acceptable to sort of invade someone's life because they're in their own bubble. You're expected to be in your own bubble.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to like tamper with theirs, it's like some people can get annoyed.
There are unwritten rules, aren't they, about social conduct? And it's something I've thought about, especially when I was younger, like, what is the appropriate response? How do I respond? What do I say in this situation? Because I could certainly think of the way I would have responded, but I'd be thinking, well, is that going to go down well? I can't think of an example, but say something would happen, and I would think, right, I'm well within my rights here to respond in a way that would be as if I was outraged at this. But if I do that, there's going to be some people that say, just chill, it happens all the time, you're overreacting. So I'll mellow it down. And if I just act really calm and cool and casual about it, somebody else is going to say, you should have been outraged at that. That's just... And I remember thinking, well, what is the appropriate response in this situation? I didn't know the groundwork.
I don't think there is a right or wrong.
I was trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we all go through that stage, right? When you're teenagers and how you speak to adults, and then you sort of observe how adults speak to each other.
Yeah.
And there might be a lot of like friction there, so you might grow up thinking, okay, well, I'm going to change my tone, I'm going to change my attitude.
Yeah.
If you're brought up and there's a lot of shouting and things like that, you might think, okay, well, I'm going to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So I suppose like observation is evolution in that way. We try and better ourselves, as we look at our families and people like that around.
Very often you adapt, don't you, to the situations.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of times where I was young and I would go into pubs with my dad, and the things I used to see and hear in some of those places, and if you'd have taken somebody in an entirely different context and put them in there, they would have just freaked out. But a lot of those things, you just think, oh, it's just so and so doing what he does, and it's normal to you, But yeah, it's finding that sort of that groundwork, I suppose. So when somebody would say, "Oh, was that a good film?" and I think, well, I thought it was, but you might think it's absolutely crap. Or if I say it's crap, you might think it's a great film. So is it a good film? It's just really subjective, isn't it? Depends on what you like, I suppose.
Would you have been freaked out if that doors man asked you, what do you think of elephants?
I probably would have been a little bit embarrassed when I was a teenager. I'd be thinking, am I on candid camera, or is he like crazy, or...
So maybe that's what's touching on what's socially unacceptable. It's like, humiliating somebody, making them feel uncomfortable. Because that isn't fair, is it? If somebody's in their own bubble and they're living their life and they might have social anxiety or just, living in the world, and they're free to live how they want, and if somebody's approaching them and sort of, it's kind of harassment, I suppose. Even if you're asking like an innocent, really calm question, hey, what do you think of elephants?
It depends how you do it. You could do it in a way that is deliberately condescending or humiliating. I suppose but then again, there's a part of you that thinks, well, I would respond like that. That's like social conditioning, I suppose. But there's another part of me that's just totally open and willing to just embrace it.
Depends what mood you're in.
Depends what mood you're in.
Depends what you think. Depends why you're out. Depends why you're on the bus in the first place. Because a lot of the time, you see things and you think, God, I'd love to get involved with that.
Yeah.
I'd happily, laugh and like talk back and be cheeky back and try and outsmart them back.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it'd be like, you're just not in the mood to respond to that.
And then you might think, this is just completely harmless, a really interesting person just trying to make some conversation. Or it could be somebody who's like, I don't know, a paranoid schizophrenic, and if you give them the wrong answer, they're going to stab you. And you don't know, do you? You don't know you just don't know anything about the situation. So I suppose by default you would be a bit protective, and that's completely understandable. But it was just something I remembered in the book.
But what do you think about this social conditioning then? What do you think is like social conditioning? It starts off like from being born really and being around families and how we're supposed to talk and stand in line.
Yeah, and it's there for a reason, I suppose, isn't it? You have to have a certain amount of order.
In society? In
any society or group or whatever you're in, tribe or whatever, I suppose. You've got to have boundaries and limitations, haven't you?
What do you think of the standards, though? Like, I mean, especially like in Britain now, and obviously that's global, but it's in the West,
I guess it's a happy compromise. Sometimes I think, well, what's wrong with people walking around completely naked? What's wrong with that? But then I think, well, that would just be outrageous, wouldn't it? I wouldn't want to see people walking around naked. So it's, I'm willing to wear clothes if you're going to wear clothes, and
I see the
I'm
compromise.
not really too offended at a human body either. But you've got to be progressive, and but so, yeah, they're there for a reason. And you can see things that you think, well, that could be improved. And other things you think, wow, we've made a lot of. I don't know if progress is the right word, but just look at the generation before us or the one before them. My dad was always conservative to me growing up, but pretty liberal compared to the generation before him.
Yeah.
And this generation, his generation was like a bridge, I suppose, between like ultra conservatism and a new wave of liberalism.
So you think we're getting more and more like open?
I think, yeah.
I think we are as well. I think that's becoming obvious.
Seems to be going that way.
And that's good. I mean, that's more freedom, right? It's ultimate freedom.
It is. Yeah, it is. I suppose there are... Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to proceed with a little bit of caution, but generally I'm for that.
Well, this is when I think kind of political correctness gone mad comes in.
Yeah.
Where everyone's entitled to be offended and something should change because they are offended.
Yeah. When you say ultimate freedom, it's, you could say, all right, well, I want the freedom to just do whatever I want or take any drug that I want, and that's great, but there's consequences for everybody else when it goes wrong for you or for your family and then for your society. Or I want the freedom to just go around and sleep with whoever the hell I want and get married and have a divorce a year later. And great freedoms, but there are consequences to those things as well, aren't there?
But I suppose that wouldn't be what somebody would want to do if they were free. The people wouldn't want to go too crazy. I mean, what kind of society or world would we live in where it's like if you get the chance, you would go around taking drugs and sleeping with whoever? Ideally, the healthy, free mind would just be calm and want to eat well. That's
the key word, ideally. And you're right. I think ideally it would, but.
Are you saying like we're pushed into a corner, so if people are like complete freedom, they would go pretty mad?
No, I think in the ideal world, it always comes back to, well, in the ideal world, communism would be great, wouldn't it? But it's not really reflective of reality because humans just aren't like that. And so if you don't have some sort of like, people see marriage as a shackle, don't they? And yeah, maybe so, but it's, it's perhaps a good thing that it's not easy to be able to just get out of a marriage overnight because there's so many things that hinge on it very often, especially if you have children. So these freedoms are all fine and well, and I'm generally for more freedoms, but I think, could we handle that much freedom? I don't think we could, not at the moment. I just don't think people are...
I kind of think, man, it's kind of like a pendulum. When people are trapped.
It is.
And then once they're given a bit of freedom, especially with like the social media where everyone's got a voice.
Yeah.
So it's people feeling like they've been unheard their entire lives.
Yeah.
And now they've got this platform to kind of talk and people are going to take them seriously. They can tag, companies in and some companies respond and this and that. They can get on the news based on this.
Yeah.
And it's not even travelling to a BBC studio or anything or somebody coming to you. It's you sitting wherever you want, just on the phone. So that kind of that platform, that voice that people have got, that's a pendulum swinging in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
From restriction and silence to being able to shout and everyone can hear.
Yeah.
So it's that pendulum effect, right? And it's going to swing, and once people get over that and it gets boring, it's just going to kind of come back to the middle and just be rocking, just vibrating in the middle. And I think that happens with everything. It's almost like something new and fun that people get, like a kid with a new toy. It's like, yay!
Yes.
And then the pendulum's in one direction because it's the best toy in the world for like a week. But then eventually ends up in the corner and like it's barely moving the pendulum anymore.
And it's a slow, long, winded out, painful process very often for the people that have to go through it. But it's hopeful that it will always eventually settle in the middle. And hopefully that'll just carry on, I suppose, and eventually we'll have like the perfect society? I don't know.
But then there's always going to be new things. There's going to be new platforms of expression, and
there are. it's just amazing what there is now, isn't it? Just the fact that we can sit here and do this. All right, you've had tape recorders for a long time, but this is relatively simple to put together, and everybody can hear it. And that's just astonishing, really. But in a way as well, I mean, once upon a time, not everybody had a platform, and so there was like a hierarchy, I suppose, of competence in a way. Joe Bloggs couldn't just get himself out there on the airwaves, and so the people that did, unless the social structure was corrupted, you would presume that the best people were the ones that would be able to do that. But whereas now everybody can do it, is there going to be some sort of natural filtration process wherein some people just aren't going to be heard at all?
Yeah, I think that's already happened. That's already happening.
Yeah, it must be.
I do think there's natural...
Look at the ratings and the views on certain shows.
Exactly, man. And maybe at the beginning, it was like the first people who got there on the internet, worked their way up quickly.
Yeah.
But now we're like 2 decades later. I think we have got to that natural filtration where people are... The people at the top, with all the subscribers and all this, they've got a huge subscriber count for a reason. I kind of trust that.
Oh, absolutely. Because if somebody said to you, I've got a show, do you want to come on it? And you're like an MP or something, 40 or 50 years ago, you'd have thought, oh, well, it's some sort of show. But now it could just be like, us doing this. And they might think, oh, well, why am I going to go on yours? I'll go on the BBC, or maybe just a notch down from that. And so... Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
It's great that everyone can, and I suppose the ones who are, I'm not going to say worthy, but that process is just going to happen. That natural selection that happens in every single area of life will happen with this as well, presumably.
I think it's changed social norms. This freedom of being able to talk and post things like that. Say you see somebody being a jerk on the internet.
Yeah.
And, there's a guy who's shouting at somebody, like a husband and wife, like having a domestic, like in public.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, what a jerk. And people are commenting, right? And say there was that person at home who would do the same thing as the man who's just been having an argument with his wife. Yeah. And he's seeing this footage and he's seeing all these people commenting, going, oh, what a twat, what a jerk.
Yeah.
And he's thinking, oh, God, that's me.
Yeah. Or it could have been me.
It could have been me. And God damn it. So... in a way, that's changing people.
Yeah,
I think it's pointing out jerk-like behaviour.
Yeah.
When before, it's just limited to schools, school, lunchtime and, school growing up and stuff. And then when you get into the real world, you're more hidden from this. It's not like, you got bullies and things like that where you can see people being jerks because everyone's living their adult life. But because you've got this online social playground, which is Facebook and wherever, Twitter and all this stuff.
Yeah.
People can see each other. It is like that. That's like the online school ground that you used to have when you were kids, where you can see the bullies.
Yeah.
And you can see jerk-like behaviour. But then when you live in adult life, you don't see that. So with social media, we can now.
It really is changing things. Even when you talk to somebody that you don't know, you think, well, they might be recording me, and then I might end up on some, secret interview or something somewhere, especially if you're somebody of power or status. I'd be afraid to talk to anybody.
I think that's quite unfortunate if people are thinking that. Man, I was dating this girl not long ago, and she was a bit paranoid of that.
Yeah.
She was like, blah blah could be filming, and she didn't want to be talking too loud about whatever, just in case somebody was recording.
Yeah. So, and
it was like,
what's going on with, Prince Andrew at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
That was like 18 years ago or something. People are just coming out and saying he was doing this and he was doing that. But now they got video footage of you as well and a recording, it's like you're finished. So that's going to change things.
That's not a bad thing. Yeah, I don't know what he did, but if there was corrupted behaviour involved, and now I suppose the cream does rise to the top. The truth does come out in the end, hopefully. And it's almost like people being bothered by God. I used to be in this big time whole conspiracy, the big nanny state. So many cameras around, CCTV recording you at every street, every corner. And it's like, well, really, if you've got nothing to hide, what are you bothered about? People are like, it's restricting your freedom and this and that, which it is, which, we can talk about like endlessly.
Yeah.
But really, I was more furious about it when I was younger, I suppose, because it was more of like restriction on freedom. But then really, it's like, well, I got nothing to hide. I don't give a damn. Sometimes if someone was filming me doing this and that, I'd like to see the footage. I'd probably laugh my ass off. What the hell was I doing when I didn't know they were watching?
Yeah.
I was probably talking to myself.
CCTV in public, I think, is, it's a necessary evil, I suppose you could say. Especially now. But just in terms of...
But there isn't somebody sitting down watching. Why do you think it's an evil?
Well, because I would rather a world in which that wasn't being filmed, and I don't know why.
But more trustworthy individuals, people that aren't going to commit crimes.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. But I don't really care that there's cameras, but I think, well, it's a trade-off, and I suppose I'd rather they were there, given the way things are at the moment. It's like when sometimes we lose certain freedoms for the greater good. It's like, okay, before you go on an airplane now, everybody has to be scanned or patted down or whatever, and, well, yeah, okay. That's okay with me,
Yeah, that's a whole other different topic, like, as to why maybe people should be patted down, and the whole there's PSA.
I don't know what they call it. No, I don't know what. Or
the American, security agency.
But just talking before about not having anything to hide. If you were somebody who was well known, my fear with this is that sometimes they do say things that would be politically incorrect. And somebody I was listening to a while ago, actually, and he said that the interviewer had said to him, I think it was at Jordan Peterson, actually, I remember the lady had said to him, why does your right to freedom of speech trump the rights of this person, their right not to be offended? And he said, well, in order to be able to think clearly, you have to risk being offensive. And so once you become afraid of saying the wrong thing, because there's certain things I would say to people that I wouldn't say to other people, and they know I'm not that way minded, but certain phrases and expressions I would use, I wouldn't want to be constantly on edge about saying the wrong thing and then having that twisted or used against me in some way. So I don't think you could just fully express yourself in a conversation if you had that fear.
Yeah, I think you've just not got to have that fear at all.
No.
You've just got to be yourself.
Yeah.
And it's other people's problem if they're offended, because most people don't really want to offend others anyway.
No,
they're just being expressive. And even if they are, maybe not like politically minded, or their agenda being politically biased, maybe if they're excited and passionate about something, then good. I think we need people like that in the world. If somebody is passionate about something, I don't want to be offended and try and drag them down. I'm just I just don't get their passion at the moment, but good on them.
Because it's always turned into something political very often.
Yeah.
You think, well, I've got my thoughts and my views, and I suppose that falls somewhere on the political spectrum, but I didn't even mean it to be political. And I've had people who just, unfriended me on Facebook over the years, and I've noticed, and I think I know why, because we've had an interaction, and I think, well, that's just natural selection. That filtration process will take place, and I'm thinning out the crowd, so to speak, and keep doing that, because all the ones who are there will be the right ones, and the ones who aren't, that's fine. But it's amazing the things you can say that people will not tolerate.
I bet, man. There's that phrase, the first step towards failure is trying to please everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that, even like it's a business move. If you're a business coming out and you want to sell to this people, you can't sell to everybody. You can only sell one thing. You can only sell one point of view. You're not going to make everybody happy. And that's fine. That's good. That's healthy. That's natural. But if someone's got passion, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I think passion, I don't know, man, there can't be any false pretenses in passion. If people want to go out and say what they want to say, and they're excited about it, enthusiastic about it, that's always worth listening to.
And they have the highest good in mind.
Yeah.
Because very often that's not the case. But I think if it is the case, and you're willing to say, maybe I'm wrong about this, and I could change my views on that, would this create a better world? But I think as long as you keep that in mind, the highest good for everybody, you should never be afraid to express anything or talk to anyone about anything, if that's your guiding principle. Because it's like self-correcting, and you've got nothing to be afraid of. And you saying about not being able to please everybody, I wish I could remember who said the quote, but it it went something along the lines of, it could have been Margaret Thatcher, actually. We're probably not allowed to say that. But if everybody likes you, you've got a serious problem or something like that. And that just makes so much sense, because you just cannot please everybody. It's not possible. And if you are pleasing everybody and everybody likes you and loves what you think, then you're not really being honest.
You're not being authentic, no.
Because at some point in your life, because I did it when I was young, you think I'm going to agree with him and I'm going to agree with him when I was like 16, just because I didn't want any conflict, you know?
Yeah, there's no nobility in that at all.
There's no nobility, and you want their approval. But what happens if those two people meet in front of you? Then what are you going to do? And that's going to happen at some point, and that's not going to be good. So there comes a point where you have to just say, this is what I think. Mm. And there's no reason for us to not be friends about it, unless your ideology is so possessive that it says you can't be friends with anyone that thinks differently from you, which some people are like that.
I think people are happy to argue with others as long as the other person is being honest and truthful, because it's good to exercise each other's opinions and each other's minds. You don't want somebody just agreeing with you.
No.
You don't want somebody with a contrasting view. Like if you had a contrasting view to mine, like even like about weightlifting or something, I wouldn't argue my point. I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
I might have my data and research and whatever, but it's how you grow, and isn't that the point? The whole point of communication, right? It's not just to be right, because it gives a damn. There's no real right or wrong. It's just like we're trying to get further and further to the truth.
Yeah.
And we'll always be doing that as a species. We're trying to get towards the truth.
That's
that's what science is trying to do. And like people that who would be against science, more like religious faith, right?
Yeah.
More towards religion, would be like trying to bring down science.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they're not saying they're right. They're saying this is what we've discovered. I don't know. They got their hands up.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there is a lot of conflict within those two domains. Yeah. And I always try to take the view that religion and faith were in what's the term? Non-overlapping magisterium. So they were exclusive and unique to themselves within their own realms, and they shouldn't really cross paths. But obviously they do, and I understand that too. But yeah, if truth is the guiding principle in any interaction, you think, oh yeah, I should assume this person can teach me something that I don't know, perhaps, or I haven't really thought about the point that they're making. And it can be difficult to do that, especially if you're like possessed by your own views and ideologies, and you just want to prove them right and you're wrong. And that's not the right way to go about it. Because if you are right, they're going to find out eventually, and if they're right, you're going to find out eventually. But
a lot of people aren't bothered about that, and that good word that you use, possessed.
Yeah.
Never thought of it like that. As somebody possessed, with their own the madness that they're right.
Yeah.
And it's not about whether they're actually correct, whether they're reaching the truth or not. It's them being right. It's their opinions. And that's what's insane.
Yeah.
That's what's insane with this whole online world now, where people are just spouting what they think is right.
You can usually tell when that's the case, because you can predict what they're going to say or how they're going to respond. I think it was Nietzsche that said, people don't have ideas, ideas have people. And that's a really great statement. And you can
that blows my mind.
You can normally tell when somebody's like that, because you can, it's like in science, isn't it? You should be able to predict something. And when that happens, you can have a hypothesis and work your way up to a theory, but you start poking and prodding in the right places and they respond, you go, yeah, now I'm on the money. And you can usually tell that.
Unfortunately, I think some people aren't worth given a microphone to. If it's if they're just going to give their opinion and not try and reach the truth, for the benefit of the good, why bother, right? And these people shouldn't be given attention.
No.
And this is when it gets insane with the world.
As long as we don't censor them.
Yeah, don't censor them. They can shout, but I'm just not going to listen. Why would we listen to people that aren't really, when they're just trying to express themselves, their opinion?
Yeah. Unless maybe there's 1% of some goodness in what they're saying, Perhaps you might. Well, is it worth listening for that? I don't know.
Well, I suppose I'm talking about trolls. What we call trolls now, which are just saying something just to kind of cause offence, just to poke, Okay. And they're messing around and they're purposely trying to be offensive and this and that. Just don't listen.
Yeah.
Do you mean they don't exist then? Yeah. People don't exist, and that can be anything in life. You know, just don't give what isn't good for you time and attention.
Yeah.
Just filter that out.
I mean, I think that is what happens. I'm all for giving those people a platform, and then hopefully what will happen is people will soon figure it out, and they'll just be there standing on their own with an umbrella in the rain, and people have figured it out, you know. But sure, let them be heard.
Let them talk.
But what will happen is they'll just be isolated, won't they? You would presume.
But then there's too many. There's too many of them. People keep popping up. People love their 5-minute, 15-minute fame. People get attention.
So it's sifting through all the crap, isn't it, I suppose? That's a difficult process.
Yeah, I mean, we did touch on it before about like the whole natural filtration, where it's like, you know, if there's a brand and there's a platform, then that's worth listening to.
I think
that's always going to be there, I suppose. Then there's always going to be like people just out to be jerks.
I think it's why I remember thinking about this, and I partially understood it. You know, why certain communist countries like Cuba, for example, don't allow freedom of the press. And I always used to think, well, that's just outrageous. You know, you've got to have freedom of the press. But then I realised, like, what things like this can do to people's minds. If you you want a certain segment of the population to turn on another segment of the population, you can quite easily use the media to do that. And so it really can poison people's minds. Now, I do believe in freedom of the press, but I do understand why some governments don't, because once those ideas start getting in people's minds, the question is, should they have the right to hear it? And I think they should, but in many cases, it would probably be better if they didn't. You know, so I totally understand why it was like that in Cuba.
Say, like in the UK, was it like the '97 British election? People were for Tories, for the Conservative Party, and then I think The Sun, which was by far over double the highest readership in the UK. It was like, you know, 3.5 million compared to Daily Mail, which is like 1.2.
Okay.
You know, they switched to Labour, and then, you know, Tony Blair, and then Blair ended up winning.
Yeah.
And you know, people will still look back at that and say, you know, this is a major reason, a huge factor as to why Labour and Blair ended up winning. It's because the UK's biggest readership. Yeah. And, you know, the internet wasn't as high as it is now. It was like at the beginning, it was in early stages. Not everybody had the internet.
Yeah.
So
we didn't know.
That had a huge difference, right? So
yeah, for sure.
That's insane power.
I remember that election.
That's insane power, you know, for the Sun just to kind of switch their views there, because then that can be corruption.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
You know, so that's scary, and then that's affecting, you know, policies that are going to come in,
and that's one of the trade-offs of having total freedom of the press, I suppose, isn't it? You're going to get things like that happen. But just look at societies. I mean, I always use Cuba as the example. I'm not communist or anything like that, but the people that they champion in those societies, they're heroes, versus the types of people that are at the top of the dominance hierarchy in the West, which are people like, you know, footballers and anybody that's got nice white teeth and a fancy hairstyle. And you just look at the contrast in those two countries, and I think, well, that's probably why they see it as such a poison. It's like the highest earners in society in the West are like Hollywood actors and celebrities and things like that. You know, when really, I would hope we would be championing people who had great minds, and scientists and philosophers and political heroes and stuff like that, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like there is something really phony and plastic about the way we do it in the West. And so I can see why they don't want crap like that, you know, getting into people's minds.
Oh man, I mean, I can see that. I mean, that just comes down to like money and business, isn't it? That's taken over. So if it can be sold, and you know, you're going to make millions off that, off how people look, right? That's like the biggest selling point. So I suppose, you know, people have just let businesses take over too much, and I think again that's just given attention to the wrong things.
Yeah.
Because we have the power, man.
Yeah.
You know, we're the reason why the world is what it is now, and you know, these celebrities are high up and whatever. You know, they've got so much attention. You know, it's people.
Yeah.
We're giving ourselves that. You know, people are buying these magazines. They're buying these products. They're talking about these people.
Yeah.
Power to the people, man. Like it's literally us. It's the world's the way it is because of us.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I'm really not.
No.
But I'm just saying that we have the power. People want to look like the celebrities.
They do. that is, and that is like us in our natural state, isn't it? That's when we're born and we grow up, that's kind of just the way we would be.
But they don't want to be intellectuals. They want to look good. They don't want to have a good mind.
So yes, and unless that's steered or sort of guided in some way, it's that is going to get to the top, that way of thinking, I suppose.
It's just people that have got a lot of money just having fun.
Yeah.
Just getting more money.
Yeah.
You know, rather than it being, you know, let's get like the greatest minds together possible.
Yeah.
It's not.
No. Because very often you look at a lot of those people and you just think, oh, you know, nothing pleasing on the eye to look at. Just some old guy with glasses and a bald head, and the average Joe doesn't know who the hell somebody like, you know, Carl Jung is. But it's like, well, there you go. But I dare say if he looked like David Beckham or something, everybody would know who he was. So that's just something I was thinking about once.
You never really get like, I don't know. I mean, the media would love that. Someone who's like an absolute brain box, but then good on the eye as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Wouldn't that be like a perfect...
Superman, for example.
Yeah.
He's got, you know, the might and the mind and the intelligence. Like,
that'd be the ideal.
All of those attributes. Yeah. The ideal. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You don't get that much, though. It's one way or the other.
Seems to be, doesn't it? It seems to be.
Why is that? Why has nature done that?
I don't know.
Maybe it's just like hair. Maybe anyone can make themselves look good, but they prefer just to be scruffy and be, you know, because it's more about their mind. You know, they see the world completely different.
Is it just a natural consequence of enlightenment in some way that you realise this body is actually just the vessel through which you experience life, and to put too much effort and energy and time into maintaining that is ultimately just a fool's game. You have to look after yourself and eat well and exercise. Of course, I get all that. But when you start spending thousands and thousands on trying to get the right shaped nose or making sure you've got your hair, it's like you're kind of missing the point here. You know, it's your mind that you should.
But you don't have to spend that money to look good.
No,
it's just like, you know, just get hair done. And...
But when it gets down to either or, it's like, you know, people who are, you know, there's like an obvious chap that walks around town, you know, and I won't name him, but a lot of people have said that guy's just like an angel, you know, he's really smart, and he comes across as being really enlightened, but he just looks like a tramp, you know, and it's like, maybe that's why. He's just getting ready to just let all of this go, and he's just on another level altogether. Maybe, or maybe, I don't know, maybe not. I
think like a lot of times it's a sense of fashion, man. You know, I think like people that have got the minds, they're not going to be trying to get up to date with what's trendy and cool to wear. No. We're just going to wear clothes, just something that's warm and just sensible to wear.
Yeah.
You know, not so much about, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about what clothes should look like modern day clothes, so I can't use anything as an example.
Well, neither do I. I've never ever been interested in fashion, and that was, I mean, in this discussion, that would probably sort of like put us up a peg. But I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying I've never really been interested in fashion. I like nice things, quality clothes that are well made. I mean, you can't help but admire, well, you know, the craftsmanship that goes into certain things, but
it's the focus again. I think if someone's focus is like fashion and is what looks good and what will be trendy and what's in, you know, what's in this season, the time of year for this and that, the year for it, the brand, the name of the brand, you know.
I've always associated it with like a carnal, tribal sort of, to use a biblical term, like being in the flesh. So why would you want to look really nice? Ultimately, well, probably to attract a mate. Yeah. Why? So you can reproduce. But it seems like the more spiritual mind has transcended that, and it's gone out of this animal cycle of just needing to just attract mates and reproduce, and it's going into other realms, you know. It's transcended the animal, and I really admire that in people. Perhaps in a way that's not good, because when I meet somebody, and I know nothing about them, and you're figuring out whether or not you like them. If they don't have children and they've made a conscious choice not to have children, they'll automatically get 1 point for that. Whereas the person that does loses a point. And I know that sounds really bad, but it's like, well, you've given into your animal nature and you've transcended it. Boom, you get a point. That's just the way I think. But most of my friends have children, and it's not a thing. It's not an issue. But
you haven't got like a chat.
I tend to think along those lines. People that don't go with the animal nature are. I'm just more drawn to those people. Whereas the others,
interesting, man.
I went out and got laid last night, and it's like, yeah, you were just controlled by your DNA like every other creature. Transcend it for God's sake, but that's just me.
But surely we must have a slight inclination to give in, because you eat food.
Obviously,
it's the same as eating.
And we
sex.
sustain the population, of course. But maybe that's why, like in Buddhism, it's you don't want to be reborn. It's like, right, just end that cycle of birth and rebirth and reproduction, and it's like, I'm ready to go to nirvana, man. And I get the way of thinking in that, even though I don't believe it. But yeah, if everybody did that, then there just wouldn't be any more people. So I completely understand it, but
there'll be less and less people, and
the ease with which people will just go along with their nature has always amazed me without giving it any thought. I wonder how much control we actually have over it anyway, to be honest. It's just so dominating, isn't it?
Man, this is a whole nother podcast.
That always happens when I start talking.
No. Cut him off. Shut him up. No, that's fascinating, man. I've got a lot to say about that as well.
Yeah.
But we've spoken about a lot about communication, I suppose, today. So we'll call it quits now, I think, for this podcast, Jim.
I've only just got our trousers off, but okay.
Yeah? Which mean you want to keep going?
No, it's good. That's good.
Cool.
Obviously, there's so much we could say about it.
There's a lot, man.
That's a good place to stop it.
Yeah, I think you've said some amazing, monumental quotes in that, especially in the last 15 minutes.
They weren't mine, but just things I've remembered.
No, you went on a rant and you pinpointing words, and it was great.
Okay.
It was really good. But I've got
in the words of Freddie Mercury, "Don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time." But no, it's probably best that you do.
Amazing, man.
Because I'm running out of green tea here, so we'll have to stop anyway.
That's it. It's that detoxing.
Mm.
Alright, man. Dolphin Podcast.
Dolphin Podcast. Episode number 2.
2, man.
It's been good.
It's been good, man.
Okay.
Peace, Jim.
See you soon, James.
Peace, man.